It's a couple of minutes over, so I think it's a good time for us to get going. So welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's webinar will be about acting phishing attacks in Denmark, as it says here on the screen. Presenting for you today will be my colleague,
Alice Ogren,
and myself, Mikael Knus. We work with our customers here in the Nordic regions with phishing and helping employees identify phishing attacks. The agenda for today is during the next 30 minutes, we will basically be covering the most active phishing attacks that we've been seeing in Denmark. How do they look? How do they work? And after that, we will also be going to a bit other regions, so especially where Danish companies work. And then on the statistics side, on awareness training. As many of you are doing Cybersecurity Awareness Month at the moment, we kind of want to support you guys with the information that does it actually help? Does it actually bring through some results? And that is also the reason why we are arranging this webinar to just support the Security Awareness Month with some information on real attacks.
Exactly. So as you all may be well aware of, phishing is the easiest way for a hacker to access information, sensitive information in an organization. And about 90% of breaches start with a phishing element. Now, I'm not talking about the you have inherited $1 million from a distant relative kind of phishing email, but rather the trends that are out there, the localized ones, and also the more targeted ones to the regions. Much like the rapid turns that we generally see in the IT industry with new innovation, the hackers and their sophisticated ways are also ever evolving. So you may have a really good insight into your own organization and the kind of threats that you see on a daily basis from reported emails that you receive. But we want to dig into a little bit more about the more technical, the local trends that we see today in the Danish region. Enabling the employees to identify and report today's sophisticated phishing attacks is one of the best ways to lower the risk in your organization.
Exactly. And as we are working a lot with our customers on real phishing attacks and reporting those to the IT security teams, we have a lot of information on that, on how they look and how they work. So let's now kind of go through the real threats that we actively are seeing in Denmark, targeting Danish employees and citizens. Now, NemID migration to MitID has been one of the most active and largest attacks that we've seen in Denmark. This is an authority impersonation attack. So, for example, many of you have probably seen like a CEO impersonation attack during the years. I'm guessing, almost everyone has seen one or heard about one during the years. And this is quite in line with that then. An official authority basically contacting you or pretended to be one, and through that, getting you to believe in the message. This specific campaign, we've seen many different versions of it. So many different, approaches to, this campaign. Usually this can signal to us that it's different threat actors that are, attacking when we see many different versions. But as this is kind of like a mass campaign where, the target is just to get a few people to click on it and go on it. So they're sending out in masses this message to the companies. The goal is that, that when you only get a few people to click and you send out a lot of messages, that these spam filters, the technical filters that we have in the organizations, they start picking up on these messages and more start blocking them out. And that's why we also see that the messages change and more and more different variations come into play. And also, as we've been seeing a lot lately, phishing kits are more and more easy to get your hands on nowadays. So more and more of these mass campaigns are also be visible then to the employees. And next one that we've been seeing a lot of is Danish health insurance attack in Denmark. And this is basically a refund scam that we've been seeing a few times this year already. And, as average citizens, we have quite a high trust in, organizations such as banks and, insurance companies that we work with, or tax authorities, for example. And this, is what they're also relying on when doing these attacks and then targeting us. And this example here in the background is actually quite sophisticated, and they copied quite well a lot of the text and sites and forms that are officially also used. And maybe one of the things that we've seen here that's especially related to this is like the grammatical improvements in these messages. During the years when we've been working with this, we've seen that earlier, for example, for Denmark, when you have special characters, translations of those have been quite sloppy. It's been quite easy to see, that it's not, a real email. But nowadays, translation services, everything is getting better. So we will see more and more of these really, really good or sophisticated attacks that are they look quite real.
Not like the Google Translate anymore. They're a little bit more sophisticated and more targeted.
Exactly. However, one of the techniques that are also used in these attacks is that something you're going to see in a couple of simulations here is that sometimes the attackers do leave a few mistakes there in the message. It's poorly written or something similar. The idea there being that if they can get a target that doesn't really pay attention to detail, and they can get that person to respond to them, then they know that most likely they will not in the first instance notice that they're actually being scammed or are under attack, and they more likely will be giving their information out. So that's something to think about also when reading these emails, and if there are some mistakes or not. Good. Next one we'll be seeing is kind of a favorite for many different regions, but also hitting Denmark, then Scott.tk, so tax refund scam. And this is something that we've been seeing for years. The last 5 years, it's been the same situation. It's usually quiet during the summer months, but otherwise, usually it starts popping up again when it's something, tax season, so to say, starts again. But always when there are like these changes in countries or regions, for example, when COVID hit and there was a lot of tax reliefs and other big events, then usually these kind of campaigns pop up. And for example, many states started to offer these tax relief programs, and then you had to apply for them. And these official portals were coming out. So what we were seeing is that quite often the attackers had their own portals out even before the official sites. So meaning that you didn't even have something to compare with, are you on the right site or not? And this has been seen also even in smaller regions like in Finland here where we are today. Not many people speak Finnish, but even we are targeted in the same way, and more and more of these official attacks and official kind of like portals are seen also here in our region.
They really do use like a lot of the big events when it comes to when hackers, like they really use the same kind of tactics, which is obviously quite sad when you think about how it can really affect someone, and especially during the pandemic. So it's sad that this is still a thing, but it's also good to be aware of what is out there.
Yes, and especially like the war and in Europe at the moment and stuff like that is something that we see quite a lot of nowadays, sadly. But moving forward then to something that we've been seeing also in other regions, not only related to Denmark, but is this kind of campaign that you're seeing there in background. It might be a bit small, but basically it is the police or official authority that is connecting you contacting you and basically stating that you committed a crime, something, with cyber, pornography or pedophilia, something that wakes emotions for you. And this campaign we basically seen first, I think it was France or somewhere in the beginning of the year, but it has basically been moving from the southern parts of Europe up north during the year, also reaching, this is another example of this email, but also reaching then Denmark. And kind of the main changes that happens in these are the language translation, usually quite sloppy translations. So, and also kind of the logos and icons and who are sending these simulations or like emails to you are usually not that exact, not that sophisticated. But again, kind of a thought in the background there being that if we can get someone to reply to us and give information, even though we haven't had the best, email sent to them, then that kind of, gives the attackers the idea that this person might be a good target to continue to nurture. But we also received this in a Finnish version of this attack for our Finnish companies here. And what made it especially noticeable for us is that when you see the top right corner here of the Finnish version, is that's the Finnish Football Association's icon or logo, and not like an official Finnish state. So that's something that kind of sticks in your eyes, especially here in Finland. So
I think as well, you can see that this is quite just a screenshot of this as well, because you can see the kind of pixelated in the background.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They've really spent a lot of time on this one.
Yeah. But again, mass campaigns send out this to a lot of people, then at least as 1% clicks on them and goes for it, that's enough for them. They usually get their money back based on that transaction then that happens during that, unfortunately. But moving then in more to what company related threats. So one of the most usual ones that often hits companies is like the coworker impersonation attacks. And these are like the main attacks hitting companies, and one version of these can usually be like simple salary update, salary information update, threats or attacks. And the idea there is, that you just get information either from the company or the individual. We've also seen versions where they basically then, when you're supposed to send a file of, financial information, that file then contains a virus or something similar. And that then, of course, leads to problems. But the one we're going to take a look at today a bit closer is a bit more sophisticated attack. They're taking a bit longer time to also complete, but basically the recipient here is being contacted by a lawyer about a transaction. And one of the main points that they point out here to us is that, this is an important acquisition and it's very, very confidential. So me putting, the target in a difficult situation, can I discuss about this? Can I inform my colleagues or ask someone about it? Well, it's confidential. You have to then figure out yourself.
You feel very special for being a part of it as well.
Yeah, exactly. That can also be a thing. But what we're looking at now is basically different parts of the email chain that was, and they start talking about how urgent this is and how quickly this needs to happen, and then transferring large amounts of money. To support this kind of email chain, there was also quite a lot of other communication channels that were used. There were phone calls and SMSs used. So basically, convincing or building credibility around this whole discussion. Now, when we take a look at, the request here of payment, a couple of million euros payment to Hong Kong, now when we read it, it's of course sounds, suspicious, and it raises a few questions for us. But when you're in there in the situation, it's different. It's part of everyday work life. And the discussion continued, what we saw, and they got so far as, providing, account numbers and reference numbers, and almost into the actual transfer situation. So the target in this case was actually talking with colleagues about, how to complete this transfer, getting those final, confirmations there. And in that process, one of the colleagues, then they thought this was suspicious and they rang the bell, they reported this, and through that, the whole scam, basically was revealed. And luckily enough, this led to the situation where they, didn't go through with sending a couple of million euros to Hong Kong. And through that, I believe a lot of happier faces basically based on that.
I think that really goes to show as well that how important processes are when it comes to having multiple parties that need to be part of one large transaction, but also when you look at MFA, having multiple ways and logging into a system is also kind of correlating to this.
Exactly. Good.
So that also brings us to the question, does awareness training actually work? And with that, I want to show you some statistics when it comes to the frequency of training correlating to the reporting of real threats in the organization. So as you can see, here is one example of a simulation where HR has shared a file with you with an attached list of new salaries, which was pretty much what you mentioned before. Wouldn't that be something if HR sent that kind of email to you with a list of all the salaries?
I might take a look, I have to admit.
So what we want to go into here is, as mentioned, these are numbers that are based on analysis of training frequency and how that correlates to real threat reporting and the frequency spread over a year. The countries that you see here on the screen are the most common presence of Danish global organizations where their offices are located. So this includes Denmark, Germany, US, UK, Poland, and India. You can also find the analyzed set of data, the failure rate in the training. So in this example, we go with the user clicks or fails a simulation. So we call that a failed. And of course, the success rates. So when a user reports that same simulation. This sample data shows the results from having less than 12 training moments in 1 year, whether that is a simulation, if it's a webinar, a classroom activity, and so on, spread over in that year. And as you can see, it ranges from 16 to 26% in failure rates. And if we look at the success rates, we can see almost twice as much, ranging from 29 to 48%.
Yeah, and there can be, of course, a lot of different opinions. Is 20% a good result if every 50 employee clicks on a link, for example, in a test? But based on what we've been seeing last year, that's already a good improvement from where many companies have been, depending on, of course, how sophisticated the attacks have been.
And it could be a really good place to start. So this kind of statistics is a good thing, if we say so. So if we then want to look at the next set of data, so this is where we have analyzed sample data of users who have completed more than 36 training moments in 1 year. So same countries as before, where we now see a decrease from 16 to 26% previously in the failure rate in the training, with less than 12 sessions in a year, to between 4 to 6.6% with more than 36 sessions. So that's quite a big difference in just the frequency there. If we then move on to the success rates, again, the user who actually reports a simulation, we can now see an increase ranging from 59% to as high as 78%, with the difference really just being the frequency of the training. Now, looking at those statistics side by side for a bit of a clearer view, you can again see the frequency of less than 12 training moments in a year on the left-hand side versus the over 36 training moments spread out during the year on the right-hand side. One thing that's worth considering with this is we obviously don't want to overwhelm the employees with lengthy training sessions, but rather integrate it into their working day in small and frequent doses. So essentially, keep doing what you're doing with small dosed and frequent training, of the current trends to make it more relevant and interesting for the employees so they actually want to participate in the training as well. So as you can see, Denmark is doing pretty well in the space when it comes to the awareness in the region. So remember these statistics the next time that you take part in the training or the next time you have a security awareness month. And remember, every session, every training helps.
Exactly. And that's kind of the content that we had for you guys today, the real phishing attacks and a bit of statistics that, you know, when you are arranging these security awareness months, they do work, and keep on doing them. You know, it's helping everybody identify more, you know, threats, and keeping in mind that there are threats out there. But this leaves us to the situation with some questions and answers. If there might be some questions in the chat, we have a few minutes left. We'll be happy to answer if there are any. In addition, if they wouldn't be right now.
You can see that this is our contact details. So if you do want to reach out to us after the webinar, please feel free to do so. But obviously, if you do have questions right now, then that would we would happily answer them right now.
Yeah, looking at the chat, we do not directly yet have a question, but maybe there was some other way here. Should take participants.
We are very technical in this.
Here on this side.
And remember, you are all muted, so unless you try to unmute yourself.
One of the questions we do usually get is, you know, this sounds like quite a lot to do, a lot of trainings. So there are, of course, different ways of doing that, but, you know, combining awareness, security awareness months, classroom trainings, phishing simulations, e-learning, everything like that, everything counts, and everything goes, you know, to the right end goal, so to say here. So
exactly. And I mean, like this webinar is also a training session, so this kind of comes into that. Obviously, when it comes to, we don't want to take up too much time of everyone's very busy schedules, because we know we're all busy with doing our own thing. So having small little micro training moments throughout the year is usually something that's preferable when it comes to the engagement, but also the participation in
yeah.
And that was actually a good question there as well. So we got one question. On average, how long does it take to complete 1 out of 36 sessions? Mikhail, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, well, for example, in the model that we've been using ourselves, we talk about micro training moments. So that's about like a 1 minute training moment for an employee. So we talk about, you know, about 40 minutes per year that's been used. And that's a model that has been working. A lot of, you know, employees have been happy and been participating. But of course, combining those also with other sessions, you know, but that's one way of doing it. But then it's also important, you know, to engage people directly also in discussions and, you know, classroom trainings when there's a possibility for those.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yes. If no other questions, we would like to thank you for attending. Hopefully the content was somewhat relevant for your security awareness months, and we will be trying to do more of these webinars, perhaps one for Sweden in the coming months. We'll see how we'll do that, but hopefully you enjoyed, and please join again next time when we arrange one again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.